Hello, everybody. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today for the Classroom Cultivator. My name is Janine Wright. I'm the Communication Specialist here at Prospient, and I'll be your moderator for this webinar. For today's session, we'll hold all the audience questions until the last 10 minutes, but feel free to enter the questions into the chat at any time, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end of the webinar. So I'm excited today to introduce our presenters. From Prospient, we have Aaron Ross, Business Development Manager, and our Sales Director, Paul Golden. Joining them is Patricia Dean, CEO of Wadsworth Control Systems. So I'm going to turn the time over to them and let them tell you a bit more about themselves, and then we can get started with talking about today's class topic.
Thanks, Janine. So my name's Erin Ross. I'm the Business Development Manager for the Institutional and Conservatory Division here at Prospient. And Paul and I and our groups have been working on this Classroom Cultivator project for a little over a year now. And we are just now starting to really get these out on the market. And so we're excited to tell you guys more about it.
And my name is Paul Golden. I'm the Director of Sales for the Commercial Division of Prospient, the organization for 10 years. Oversaw well over 100 greenhouse projects built from the ground up. And I would have to say, as far as high school and classroom greenhouses, I've probably been involved in the better part of about 24 over my 10 years. And so I'm trying to bring some light to the table. But really, the two subject matter experts are the ladies I'm with here, Erin and Patricia.
Thanks, Paul. I'm Patricia Dean. I'm the CEO at Wadsworth Controls. So we partner a lot with Prospient with the curtains and controls. And so we've been doing this since the 50s, and we're excited to talk to you about our two newest offerings that we'll get into in a little bit. And we have a real passion for educational greenhouses. And I always think of the teacher first when we're designing this, because I know how busy that job is. We've got a few educators in my family. And so I always say, but what if you're the teacher? And so we try to start from that point, keeping it very simple, but then have all the tools in the background to make it complex enough for anyone that's doing research. Thank you.
Okay, so this is just our, a brief overview of what we're going to discuss today. We're going to talk about our base package as well as any optional add-ons, how our installation process works, and how quickly the setup goes. We're going to get into the control systems, and then also any planning and permitting options for your schools. Next slide. Yep. Thanks, Janine. So our base package for this Classroom Cultivator is a 30 by 60 steel framed pre-galvanized steel structure. The glazing system for this is an 8mm polycarbonate with aluminum glazing system. We have dual ridge vents, a evaporative pad system with a vent covering that. And then on the opposite wall, you're going to have your two exhaust fans that helps pull the moist air across the greenhouse at plant level. We also come with two gas-powered or electric unit heaters, one steel double door, and the Wadsworth Juniper environmental control system.
So this greenhouse is capable of being operated both passively and mechanically ventilated. And we've also put we chose the best covering option, kind of all-around covering option from an insulative value. It's a twin wall material. So it has a little bit more R value, a little bit more insulation than glass or a single layer polycarbonate material would have. But it also allows for a higher level of light transmission through the covering versus, let's just say, a more diffuse type of covering. So it's kind of a happy middle ground. We're, of course, more than happy to customize the light, the glazing opacity for your needs.
Yes. And then we have some add-ons that are options for this greenhouse as well. We have the ability to do both stationary and rolling benches. We can do an insect screens, which would be at your ridge vents, just so that when those open, it's not easy for any insects to enter in through those. We can do an automatic energy shade system, which is what you see in that lower photo there. It's a flat slope system, and it kind of goes along the peaks or along the roof line and then flat across the center of the greenhouse. It just adds an extra layer of cooling and shade for the area. We can also do plant growth lighting dependent upon your needs, and installation dependent upon your needs. Sometimes people want to buy this as a kit. If that's the case, it would typically go through Paul's group, and if it needs to be installed, or if this is like a publicly bid project, it would go through my group.
One more thing about the energy curtain that most people don't realize. One of the reasons why it's called an energy/shade curtain is, sure, it functions as a shade curtain, and it definitely reduces your energy cost in the warmer months of the year because you have less solar heat gain to the greenhouse. But during the colder months of the year, it actually acts as an energy blanket. It kind of adds another layer of covering over the greenhouse, or it's actually within the greenhouse, creating an attic space just like your home would have. And more or less, I mean, it's not 100% true for every type of fabric that we would use, but it almost doubles the R value of your greenhouse roof, saving you energy.
And these shade systems and the plant growth lighting and things of that nature can be also controlled by the control system, which Patricia is going to get into next.
Great. Well, I'm glad you two mentioned the curtain, because I've been in so many classrooms, and one of the great benefits, as Paul mentioned, is the heat retention. But also, if you're in the classroom and you're talking to the students, think of it on a hot day. Do you want to be standing out in the sun with people squinting, or do you want to be in the shade? And so it just makes it a much more pleasant environment for the students to learn in, and it really impacts the crop a lot. So it's a worthy investment. So the juniper control, we have two different controls we're going to talk about. So the juniper is included in the base package, and then we're going to talk about the seed. Both of the controls are very easy to use. They're both touch screens. They both come completely set up for whatever you have in your greenhouse, and then you can customize them, but they literally work as soon as they get connected. And so we can go on to the next slide. So I put together this because it shows how juniper works. So juniper is what we call a staged control. And so it groups the equipment. And so, as Paul mentioned, usually you start with your natural ventilation. And so first thing it's going to do is it's going to open those roof vents, let the hot air get out, let some fresh air get in. If that doesn't cool it down enough, then we're going to start turning other equipment on. We're going to open the pad vent and turn exhaust fans on and start limiting the roof vent and start cooling the air across. And so you can see in the diagram the different equipment. And so that's kind of the background behind how this works. And it's really designed, for people that want to set it and just forget about it and just walk away. It's very easy to use. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is what it looks like. It's got the same user interface on the app, which can work via Bluetooth on your local area network, or if you want a cloud subscription, which allows you to look at it offsite. And that could be your facilities people too. Maybe they want to know if there's an alarm, if it's too hot or too cold. You'll notice on the phone, it has a light background, and on the control, it has a dark background. It's very customizable. So each person using the control sets it up with their preference. I like the light. So it would do that. And then it logs all of the changes that people have made, which comes in really handy sometimes at schools. So you can either set this in the background and let it run your greenhouse, or you can incorporate it into your lesson. It has amazing logs and graphs, so you can look at that. It has a weather station that you can connect to it, so those roof vents will close if it gets windy. The curtain is really much more powerful the more sensors you add to it. But this is the Juniper, and we can do online or in-person training, and we also offer coaching. So a lot of times, educators are there during the year, and then they go on summer vacation, they come back and kind of, okay, what? And I must say that never leave your greenhouse cooking. It can't get too hot. It really damages pretty much everything in there. So we usually set profiles where it's say, hey, this is my empty greenhouse. This is this experiment or this crop that we're growing. And so we really build a lot in so that you don't have to remember how everything works, but it's very easy to use. So next, we'll take a look at what the user interface looks like. So here, you can see the day kind of right below all the blue lines. So these controls both have 3 or more time periods where you can set up the temperatures. And so here we've got day. I'm going to say this is based on sunrise and sunset because it's very specific numbers, or random numbers rather. And so the controls come set for day to start at sunrise, night to start at sunset. Usually you have your night temperatures cooler, and we have a gradual transition between those two. And that's important both for the crop board, but for energy savings, so you're not suddenly dropping the temperature down real low. So that's called our set point period. And then on the right, the top where it says 83 degrees, that's our temperature bar. And so that's going to change as the temperature changes. Right now, it's showing a cooling screen, and so it's blue. If it was down lower, it would be red for heating. And so the beauty of this control is from a distance, you can glance and see exactly what's going on. So with this, you can either set it up to just say cool 1, cool 2, cool 3, or you can put in this specific equipment. You can customize it, whatever makes sense for you. On the right, it shows that this equipment is on, so it's going to be blue. And I don't know how well you can see it, but it says it turns off at, and it shows the temperature when it turns off. So cool 1 turns, it is on, and then it's going to turn off at 70. Cool 2 is on, it's going to turn off at 72. So it's staged, kind of like steps. So it has incremental changes with each of those. Those are fully customizable, as are when you start your day period, your night period, and what your temperatures are. But it comes with parameters, so it will work out of the box. If we look down at the heating, so when the equipment is off, instead of telling us when it turns off, it's going to tell us when it turns on. And if you want to make changes, you just touch anywhere on that line for that equipment, and it takes you in and you can set everything up. Very, very easy to use. So that's going to come with your base package. And then if you need a little bit more, we can take a look at the seed. So this is our most powerful control. It can control multiple greenhouses. So let's say you get your first greenhouse and you're like, this is great. We want another one and another one. This control, you can just keep adding to the base module, and it is different. The Juniper operates based off temperature. This has a lot of different parameters. So if we look at, say, lights, you can have a light sensor, and it can say, okay, my grow light, it's a cloudy day, I need my grow lights on. And we can even modulate the grow lights. But once it hits its target, it can turn them off. So that helps the students understand how much light and consider the costs and the equipment wear and tear if you're running it too often. So this allows people to really dial everything in. And so if we go on down to the next slide, we can take a closer look at the seed interface. So super user-friendly. This one has a weather station. So it shows the outdoor temperature, humidity, sunlight level, wind speed, and wind direction. The greenhouses, so this would be 2 greenhouses. One is blue, one is red, heating and cooling. The background shows whatever the weather is. So it's blue skies, it's raining, it's snowing, and at night, the sun turns into a moon and it goes dark. So it's very user-friendly. Inside the houses, we see some of the sensors, and you can select what sensors you want to see. So in the research zone, they have grow lights, and that shows the light sensor reading in par. to enter into either of these greenhouses, you simply touch it. And then Janine, if we can go to the next slide, it shows us all the sensors at the top that were in day. So you'll notice here, day is 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So that tells me they're using clock time. So you have a lot of flexibility in how you set this control up. On this one, we have these bubbles, and the bubbles have temperatures. So the gray bubble tells us the current temperature, and that's going to float just like the temperature bar on Juniper. For this control, the target temperatures, our heating and cooling set points, are down lower. So we've got it set at 75 and 64. So that means that as long as it's in that range, we're happy, and just the HAF fans are going to be running. As soon as it gets up to 76, we want to start opening those roof vents. And you can see here we have a status, so it shows on, off, or the percentage. So very similar to Juniper. And the Y code, so this says it's on because of this temperature, and it will stay on for this long. This Y, we see it's dehumidifying for the exhaust fan. We might see the roof vent is limited because of wind speed. We might see the lights are on. So it would list all of the equipment, and you just scroll up and down. So I think that was pretty much what I wanted to cover, unless, Paul, you have anything you wanted to add?
Oh, I think just before we move on to the next slide, I want to mention that the way we've set up this Classroom Cultivator package to work is it really does have all the functionality. It's a fully functioning greenhouse. It has the ability to passively ventilate, as I mentioned before, dehumidify in the winter months by economizing the air, moving the air in and out. With our control packages, whether we do the Juniper or we do the upgraded seed package, it has the functionality to do multiple stages of heating and cooling, to not only to give you ideal growing conditions, but also to minimize the energy usage you're using in the greenhouse. So it's a fully functioning package. Of course, irrigation would have to be specifically set up for the crop needs. So that's something that's kind of a separate add-on to this greenhouse package, but it's the framework, the control system, which is the brains of the whole operation. You can have all the equipment, but if you don't have it tied properly to a controller, you're not going to get much value out of it. And it's also going to cost you more to operate it. So we have the control system. We have all the equipment that I mentioned: heating, cooling, passive ventilation. And with the cooling, we even have evaporative cooling to get below the outside ambient air temperature. And with the passive ventilation, in the northern latitudes, that's probably all the more ventilation you're going to need for half the year. The other half of the year, you're going to go through multiple stages of mechanical ventilation all the way up to evaporative cooling. But and then, of course, in the lower latitudes, you're going to end up using the mechanical ventilation probably a lot more than your passive ventilation. But it's a fully functioning greenhouse in that regard, as far as the tools in your toolbox to grow a crop and maintain the ideal conditions in almost any climate zone. And the ability to do this really comes down to which equipment we've selected to put into the structure and which control system we selected to operate that equipment.
Thanks for mentioning the irrigation. So a lot of times when I go to do training at a school, the teachers are like, oh, wait, how are we going to water on the weekends or over the spring break or, any time like that? And I'm a huge advocate of including the irrigation in the climate control. I know there are, little rainbird type systems that you can get, but the benefit of having it on the control is, of course, it impacts the climate when you're watering. It increases the humidity, it decreases the temperature. And so by having all of that tied together, the equipment knows what's happening. And when you're looking at those logs and graphs, you can see exactly what's happening. Plus, it's just a really smart, incredibly powerful system. So thank you.
Exactly. And if it's being used as an educational tool, you want the data. You want the data,
Yes.
and you can't do that with a rainbird. You want it inside one easy to access interface that everyone understands how to interpret, change, and get the data from. So yeah, irrigation is critical. If you don't have adequate irrigation inside the greenhouses, that's the difference between a successful crop and an unsuccessful crop for sure.
And with the students, they can have them, and they can look and see. You can have them set up to read only, or you can have them be able to make changes, and you can always revert back. So it's a great tool.
Yeah, thank you. A big reason that we, chose to partner with Wadsworth on this project on this Classroom Cultivator is the ease of use of their system for the end user. There are a lot of different control companies out there. Wadsworth is just it's very user friendly system.
Thank you.
Moving on to the planning and permitting. So dependent upon, the regulations in your state or county, you'll want to check with your permitting office to get pricing for permits. That may happen. That may be something that your GC does if you have a GC involved in this project. A little bit more about the overall project and planning. If it's something that Prospient would be installing, your general contractor would be in charge of the concrete pad or any footings that were going in, and then any of the MEP work. So Prospient would come in and do the entire structure, the glazing system. We would have all of our equipment set and put in place, and then that general contractor would come in and do all of those final MEP connections for that project.
So to kind of give people a bit of a roadmap, I've seen projects be built in every imaginable order you think of, but there's kind of a proper way of doing it. And more often than not, one of the first things we see is an organization would either identify a general contractor they want to work with, or oftentimes they'll get involved with an architect. And what I usually recommend people do is, before they go spend very much money with either one of those two organizations, to identify which greenhouse manufacturer you're interested in working with, and start to collect the design specifications from them first before having, for example, an architect come up with something that can't be built. I've seen this before, where they start with an architect, and the architect's he's following the code review to a T, right? That's what they're there to do, make sure that everything's safe and compliant. But then they end up designing something that no one in the world would ever manufacture, and it would cost a fortune to do if you try to. So getting the greenhouse manufacturer involved early on with the architect or general contractor oftentimes speeds the process up. It helps streamline it quite a bit. It keeps you within the standard framework of what most greenhouse manufacturers are willing to manufacture and what they're capable of doing. And then also it would help coordinate all the other trade groups that have to be assigned to this project. For example, a foundation will need to be designed, and that oftentimes requires a geotech to come out to the site. You might already have the records from previous construction at the school, but a geotech would have to come out to the site, do a soils report, soils test, and then a structural engineer, usually underneath the design firm that you're working with, the architect's design firm, would work with us as a greenhouse manufacturer to properly design the sizes of the foundations. And then the next step that would come in would be the MEP, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing trades. That has to be designed by a licensed engineer. And so they would partner again with us, work with us to get all of our spec sheets for our equipment, including the control system and all the, Wadsworth provides, for example, conduit layouts and wire sizes and things of that nature, load schedules, to assist that electrical engineer in designing the electrical plans for the greenhouse. Once all this is coordinated, and usually it's the architect or the general contractor that's acting as the ringleader of this whole operation. Prospient comes in early on to provide guidance and make sure there's no missteps or somebody doesn't go down the wrong path and spend a lot of extra money than they need to. And then the architect or GC is pulling together the foundation engineer, the soils, the geotech, and the MEP, and they put together one consolidated submittal package for the building department that has stamp plans for every aspect of the greenhouse, engineered stamp plans for every aspect of the greenhouse. That gets submitted, and then we're off to the races. Maybe a comment or two comes back, which we all work together to coordinate and get the permits. But once the permits are issued, then we're really ready for construction and fabrication and construction. I think that's what we're going to talk about next here.
Yeah, and to Paul's point, on that, we do have an in-house structural engineer. So our greenhouse, dependent, no matter where you are in the United States, will be structurally engineered for your state, and it will be the drawings will be stamped and structurally engineered.
Correct. We'll provide guidance for the foundation, column reaction force calculations for the foundation, and then we'll actually do an analysis of every member of the structure and demonstrate that it meets the structural load requirements for your specific site, whatever the wind ratings, snow ratings, seismic ratings might be, and we'll stamp those sets of plans as part of the submittal package. And then your GC or architect is typically the one doing this, is the one doing the submittal. They're the ones that are going to be communicating with your local building department. They're going to have some repertoire there, hopefully, and they'll be the ones kind of coordinating all the comment reviews, because there might be comments, for example, about the egress or the driveways or the parking lots or something of that nature, which is really outside the scope of the greenhouse manufacturer.
So if this is a project that would be installed by Prospient, we have our experienced crews who have been doing greenhouses for years. Work with your general contractor, but our crew would be installing this. We don't just have, random union people come in and put up this greenhouse. It's a very specialized trade. And in order for us to warranty our greenhouse, we have to have our installers and do the installation work. Once we're on site, it's typically a 6-week process start to finish for the greenhouse. There is some MEP work after our first 4 to 5 weeks that they would need to come in and do those final connections. And then after that, we would do a startup and commissioning for the final week and that's where someone from Patricia's team would come and show the end user how to use the controls interface and how to use all the equipment and just get a really good understanding. So we're not just leaving anybody hanging there with a brand new greenhouse that they don't know how to control it. Our team is licensed, bonded, and insured, which is very important for especially a lot of publicly bid projects. And then I did want to mention that if you are receiving some type of funding and this is a publicly bid project, we do have specifications for this greenhouse that you could put into your bid documents. It would be the section 13 and it would be in there. So then, even though you do have to receive several bids, this would be a good base. So you would have that and people would know exactly what they need to be providing.
And so our approach to construction or any project, whether we're doing the install or not, is we would assign a project manager to the project to oversee on-time delivery of materials, coordinate any kind of any type of questions from the GC or from other trade groups, and oversee that the project is completed on a timely schedule. So typically, we'll ship all this material out, we'll stage it as it's needed. So the structure comes first, and the game plan is if your greenhouse is going to be base plate and bolted to a foundation. Typically, if there's any general contractors on the call today, typically what we expect is that the slab is completely finished by the time we arrive, ready to go. So our labor crews can offload the materials off our trucks and start erecting basically within a day or so. They'll take inventory of everything, and then they'll start erecting the framework. The framework goes up relatively quickly. You'll be surprised how fast that happens. All the time in these projects is really taken in the fit and finish, the final end results. The frame within a week, your frame will be up. It's usually 3-4 weeks of all the fine details that go into making sure that the greenhouse is weather tight and sealing it up with the glazing systems and the vents. But so if the greenhouse is not going to be bolted to a concrete foundation, a slab, like say throughout, it's going to instead have to have wet set columns into concrete caissons. Typically what we ask is that the pad area is completely prepared when we arrive. The holes are all drilled So all the holes where the columns will go into the caissons are all drilled. The spoils are removed, and our crews will be on site for the concrete poured, and they'll brace all the columns up, and they'll make sure that they're plumb and with the proper slope or level, whichever way we design the greenhouse. But they'll be there for the pour more often than not to make sure, for example, the concrete truck doesn't bump one of these columns and now it's off the line that it's supposed to be on. And of course, all of our crews are OSHA certified as well, and they all they're all very mindful of life safety and all the stuff you would have to have, abiding by all the laws and regulations. So that's one of the benefits of working with us on the install, is we have, like Aaron mentioned, we're licensed, bonded, insured, and OSHA certified.
And I kind of hit on this on the last slide. I jumped ahead a bit, but towards the end of our install is when we would come in, and like I said, Patricia's team and our team would have that final week to just go over any questions that the end user has, make sure everyone's happy with everything, and yeah, that's just typically the last week of that 6-week period is for like commissioning and startup.
And during that, we also talk about how to care for all of the equipment. What's the ongoing maintenance? Because it is a living building. And so how do I drain the pad wall? How do I clean my sensors? All those different things. And so we'll go over that so you can put together a maintenance checklist for your team. Make sure you keep everything.
Definitely are elements of maintenance. Luckily, we designed this to be low maintenance, but there's some things that have to be done on a pretty regular basis. And when I say regular, twice a year, usually spring and fall, we see people go through and they'll grease certain aspects of the drive lines. So the roof vent rack and pinion system will be greased. On a more regular basis, there's wellness checkups that you should be doing. You should be making sure that your unit heaters are operating and that your louver your shutters motors are working. We call them actuators. So make sure all the shutters are open. Fan belts are tight, not squeaking. You can usually just hear that when you're inside the greenhouse. But there's certain elements of just good upkeep that you want to keep in mind. It's very, very low maintenance, though, as I mentioned. It's usually twice a year you have to actually go and do something, but the rest of the year you want to be mindful of. And the nice thing about the control systems are oftentimes it'll give you a warning if, for example, if it's not ventilating properly, then it's usually overheating. So if you have an issue with a fan belt going out or a fan motor going out or a unit heater that's just not firing up for whatever reason, usually you have a warning that you're slightly outside of your specifications. But the beauty about our design here is there's a lot of redundancy built into it. So, for example, should you have a shutter motor go out? Well, we have multiple shutters, so you're only losing maybe 15% of your capacity. That's not gonna make it so this greenhouse is not functioning. It's not functioning ideally. And should you have a unit heater go out? Well, we have 2 of them. So you're definitely not going to have freezing inside the greenhouse. However, you probably won't have the plant growth that you're looking for. Same thing's true about the exhaust fans. If you have an exhaust fan go out, well, you have multiples of those. And so chances are you'll still be able to ventilate. Plus, you have the advantage of being able to passively ventilate too. So and the control system will automatically know, hey, if I get over a certain temperature, I go into this mode where I close the shade curtain system to try to reduce the solar heat gain inside the building. And the same thing will be true if it gets too cold at night. So there's a lot of redundancies and resiliency built into this design. It may cost fractionally a little bit more to have that, but we understand that most people operating these greenhouses are not greenhouse experts. They're educators. And this may be the first high-tech greenhouse they've ever been inside. We try to make sure that every greenhouse that we build has all the components needed for a successful crop. And we really start around what crop we're growing. This greenhouse, however, is so flexible that you could pretty much grow just about anything, anywhere in it.
Another really unique thing to Prospient is that years down the road, let's say you do need some renovation work or there's an issue with your greenhouse. Prospient has an entire renovation and restoration team dedicated to coming out and helping, you replace some polycarbonate panels, or your shade system, it's gone through its life term and you want someone to replace it. We have a crew dedicated to doing those things. So it's nice to know that you would get this greenhouse from our company, and then our company could also come out and help you with any issues you had with this, or anything, changes or renovations you needed to do in the future.
And even if it's something that's not in our scope, for example, the electrical, this is one of the reasons why we partner with Wadsworth. Wadsworth's customer service is second to none. They have reps all over the country, and they have 24/7 over the phone text support. And the text support number is literally right inside the control panel. So if you open up the panel, it's right there. If you should have an issue with a piece of equipment not functioning the way it's supposed to be, you can call them up and they can help you troubleshoot it, you can call your electrician. Usually it's electrical related. You can call your electrician and they can come out and look at it, and they can call Wadsworth and easily troubleshoot this remotely.
Paul and Aaron, can you guys talk a little bit about, if a school, they want one, but they don't necessarily know what they need as far as like, do I really need supplemental lighting? Do I need to use passive or mechanical ventilation? Can you talk with them a little bit about how we work with different people that way to kind of advise them and guide them in the right direction, depending on where they're located or their needs?
Certainly. So our estimating team has at its disposal a whole in-house team of mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers, what we call our systems design group. And they consult us on individual projects if there's a need for it. And again, this is all part of the bidding phase, and at this point it's largely free to the customer, just so that we get the right design to them. But our MEP team would typically look at historical weather data from ground-based meteorological stations nearby the site, determine what the maximum and minimum temperatures are. That would be capable of looking at some of these weather stations actually have pyranometers, measurements for light levels as well. They'd be able to basically look at what the light levels are there too. More often than not, supplemental lighting, it's a luxury more than a necessity, because these greenhouses are not production greenhouses. This is more education and R&D. If you're really trying to squeeze out every gram of produce you can get out of this greenhouse, or every gram of or every pot of flowers you can get out of this greenhouse, you're probably not using it as an educational greenhouse. You're probably using it for something differently. So supplemental lighting we can absolutely do, and it's a great thing to experiment with for an educational program. And we can size that and provide recommendations and design it into the control system. But it's not usually something that's required if you're simply just trying to grow some crops to educate some young kids on how plants grow. It could be used, but it's not always necessary. And as far as ventilation goes, our basic package here is going to cover all the bases. If you're down in Phoenix, or if you're all the way up in Maine, it's gonna still satisfy the need for adequate ventilation and adequate heating. Great question, though.
Okay, so we'll give everybody a chance to enter some questions if they have any. In the meantime, hopefully Patricia will get back with us, or we kind of lost her.
Internet connection, maybe.
Yeah. And I don't know if you guys would know this, but on the Juniper controller, can it be hooked up to a weather station, or do you have to pretty much have the C controller to have the weather station?
Great question. As it stands right now, the C controller is the only is capable of doing. It has a weather station specifically designed for it, and it's a more advanced weather station that has light level readings outside as well. The Juniper weather station, which is released, it's been out for a little while. We're still kind of getting used to it, understanding what all we need it for. It's more for vent protection, so from high winds so that your roof vent doesn't get damaged under a high wind situation. And also it has a thermometer, which makes sure that we're not opening up vents when it's inclement weather outside, raining or extremely cold. So it's a little bit more rudimentary than the C controller, but it still has pretty much all the safety features that you would have or you would need from a weather station. That's a good question, though. Yes.
Speaking of redundancy, I don't know why my computer just froze up and completely locked down, and then did a little Windows update. So I
Took a little break.
That's okay. We just answered the question about the weather station. The Juniper does have a weather station. I believe the only difference is the pyronometer. Is that right? The power.
So we actually have 3 different weather options, and I'm just getting ready to send out some information on that. So we have our traditional weather station, which has wind speed, wind direction, outdoor temperature, outdoor humidity, precipitation, and then the light sensor. And what's nice about the wind speed and wind direction is if you have 2 roof vents, you can keep one of them open. So like Paul and I are both here on the Front Range in Colorado, and our wind always comes in from the west. And so if the wind is coming in really strong and we have big winds, then we can limit how much that's open and leave the other side. We also offer a mini weather station. And so there's a couple great things about this. It's wind speed. So if those vents are operating together, it doesn't matter which direction it's coming in. If it's too windy, it's too windy. And so that's wind speed, outdoor temperature, and precipitation. And what's cool about this one is these weather stations come with a mounting pole. And so we said, how can we make this easy and less expensive for shipping? Well, we made it so that you can just go to Home Depot or Lowe's and buy, a fitting pipe and pop it on there. And so it's less expensive, both, the unit and the shipping, and you can do that. And it's really kind of a good base level. Then only with Seed, we have a really cool program called Predictive Weather. And so this is, looking at the weather in the area and saying, hey, it's raining, down here and it's headed your way. And so it can start to close the vents before the system gets to you. Probably overkill for these projects, but we do have 3 different options. And Juniper can talk to all of them except the predictive weather.
Thank you.
That's a great thing that you brought up about the predictive weather. I forgot to mention that. Thank you.
Yeah. Maybe you could talk a little bit on the controllers about what kind of, historical data they collect. So say if like a school was doing some, like a poinsettia fundraiser and their settings were great and they want to use that the next year.
That's a great question. And so both controls, you can save the settings. And so whenever I go do training, I always say, well, let's talk about winter and summer and the shoulder seasons. And so you can create parameters for an empty greenhouse, but you can also get into crop specific. Hey, we're growing our poinsettias and this really worked well for us. And you can look back at the historic data. So you can both save settings and look at the data. And we can look at the data for you too. We have a full team of engineers and they really love to look at that data and look for ways that people can optimize, if maybe they've got things running too closely. I've been in a school greenhouse and they had things set a little tight and it was forcing the exhaust fan on and off and it was going to damage them. And so we were able to preventatively identify that issue before they had to replace the capacitor in their exhaust fan. So there's a lot we can do with that data. And the data, it's pretty endless what we can do. It's stored for, I think, 30 days on Juniper, but if you've got the cloud, it's infinite and you can always put it on your desktop, and with Seed, it's just there. So it's really helpful.
So speaking about the cloud service, these controllers, they have the settings saved on the physical controller, but they're also saved in the cloud. And they're saved on the physical controller so that if you lose power, right, the greenhouse still functions as it should have been, as if it was connected anywhere. But you also have the ability to basically remote access them from anywhere. And Wadsworth would also have that capability, right, if given permission from the customer?
That's exactly right. So, as I mentioned before, our engineers can either ask you to send them the data, or we can go live and you would get a pop-up saying Wadsworth would like to access your system. You would tell us the code and click yes, permission. So there's no way we can get in without that. but we can get in and do that. And it's really helpful. So if you're on your school network, and this is an important point. So a lot of times the teachers are on a different network than the control. You need to be on the same network. And if you're on the same network, it's totally free to use while you're in the range. So you can use the Bluetooth or a local area connection. And then if you want to be offsite, then that's a paid subscription because we have to pay to host the data. But one of the benefits of that is it takes those snapshots. So, we talked about the poinsettia. So it's grabbing all that data and saving it. And so we can always go in and look back at that. And if you forget to save something, we've got it for you. So
that's really important.
It's a great way to do training too, because then we can see what you're doing and we can direct you, or we can show you and then ask you to do it. We're very hands-on with our training. We want it to be easy for you. Build that muscle memory.
I think one of the beauties of this is, we don't just leave you alone. We don't leave the schools alone. Once you bought the greenhouse, now you're on your own. There's a lot of guidance there, to help them be successful, which I think is a real plus for sure.
I think just this year alone, we had 2 or 3 repeat same customer, same contractor building greenhouses for the same high school district or same school district. I think they ordered 3 or 4 of them after they built the first one. They just, they were so satisfied they came back and bought 2 or 3 more.
It's such a great learning tool. I was at a Prospient project this summer. My daughter was going to a summer camp down the street, and I knocked on the door and, I said, do you remember me? I just wanted to pop by and see how the greenhouse is. And, oh yes, of course. And it was so cute. The kids were in there and they were doing an experiment, and they were growing different lettuces, and they were little. They were like in 1st or 2nd grade. And one of them had kale and the other had arugula. And one of them was terribly concerned because his plant looked wrong. And yeah, it's just so great to see the children. And especially this one was in New York. So they really start to understand where food comes from. But yeah, it's so great. And then the older kids can start doing, incorporating it into their STEM, looking at the data and what are the impacts. And there's also different energy modeling programs like the USDA virtual grower that you can incorporate in, where it starts to show them what the heating demand predicts. And then you can look at what you're actually doing. So there's so much you can do greenhouses and classrooms.
Yeah. So, doesn't look like we have any questions. So hopefully we covered everything that everyone wants to know. But any final thoughts that you want to share before we get ready to sign off here?
I want to say, if anyone wants to see either of the controls, feel free to just reach out to us on our website or an email, and we would be happy to do a demo and show you actually how the control works and get into it a little bit more. So any questions, please feel free to reach out. And thank you to all of our friends at Prospient for letting us participate. We really appreciate the partnership.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a very valued partnership with Wadsworth. I did want to mention, our contact information is on here. Like I said before, if it's something that you would want installed by Prospient, whether it is going to be a publicly bid project or if it would be just a direct design build between the school and our company, I would be your go-to for that. If you are just wanting to purchase the greenhouse and you have someone who can install it, then Paul's group would cover any type of project like that. And then Patricia is always available for any questions you have.
Absolutely.
Last, if there's any educators in the room, I wanted to let them know that we will be attending an educator event at the Opryland Resort, I believe, this December. I believe it's December 10th.
Yes.
And that's a national event. I believe Aaron will be going.
Mm-hmm.
Those are our greenhouses, FYI, at that resort. So everything you're going to see, there's stuff that we manufactured and built, maybe decades old now at this point, but very, very high end, very nice stuff, very institutional.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
So if you want to come and visit us there, we'll have a booth set up for one of the days, and you can learn more
Yeah, and I will also be at the FFA convention, the Future Farmers of America convention that happens in Indianapolis. I think it's October 29th and 30th and 31st this year. We'll have a booth set up. I know I'll be there Wednesday and Thursday, but there will be someone there from our team all 3 days, and we'll be happy to talk to anybody about any greenhouses. This one, we really wanted something that could be cost effective and user friendly and just perfect for that high school or ag research, small college. So this is perfect for that. But we do so many things. If you need multiple zones, if you're wanting a different type of greenhouse, a larger structure, we can do it all. So really, any questions you have, even if they don't apply to this Classroom Cultivator, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to chat with you.
And Wadsworth will be at the FFA also. My colleague Amanda DeBevick will be there.
Oh, good.
And we have a cute little miniature greenhouse that will be connected to seed, so it'll show how the lights turn on and everything. So feel free to stop by and see Amanda.
That's great.
Great.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
All right.
thanks for your
Thank you
time.
so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining, and thanks Paul, Aaron, and Patricia for helping us out today with the presentation. We've got the contact information here, so any questions you have, please feel free to reach out. And if you want a good recap of what's in the base package, what the add-ons are, you can also go to prospient.com and just search Classroom Cultivator, and we have a pretty nice brochure that kind of recaps everything that's been covered here. So thanks so much for joining us, and everybody have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thank you.